Welcome to the Tuesday stream. I hope everyone's having an awesome Tuesday morning. Welcome, everybody. Okay, today we continue our journey into covering the second working group 2, I should say, IPCC report. We've got 96 pages to go, and we're just on page 17, so we've got a lot of ground to cover on that for sure. Let me start bringing some of this up here. Also, as a side note, thank you so much for the offline follow, Ninetails Cosmic Fox. Love that username. Alright, folks, it looks like we've got a cat in studio today. So we may get a sneak preview of Saturday Catterday. Good afternoon. I got here earlier. Well, that's good. I know that the time change is a little bit different. For some reason, some folks do it next week. I don't get the point. I don't get the whole point of it all now. There's some states that are doing away with it completely. I think was it Nebraska, Nevada? I forget. One of those states is just recently passing a bill to make daylight saving times permanent and just leave it. Just leave it. It's not going to serve any purpose at this point. Hey, Celticaboo, how's it going? Y'all are getting here just in time as we're getting ourselves warmed up. Try to get all this stuff here together. I think on this one, we are on page 17. Okay, sorry, 19. It becomes more useful when you go more north or south? What? Yeah, but I thought it was for the whole purpose was for like, productivity, but that's not really a thing anymore, is it? 50 degrees north. I just don't understand what it is for now. Like what the purpose is for now. You're in the tropics where saving time is not valuable. Yeah, but like what is the purpose at this point in time for doing that where where you'd think it is valuable. What exactly would be the point then? Even if I lived in your area, what would be the point of it? All right, folks, we've got to hit the. Well, there's not a lot, to be quite frank, there's not a lot of variety of news today. Um, well, in the winter, we only get 7 hours of daylight, so moving it 1 hour helps. Again, for what purpose though? Like, is there a necessity that because of our technology nowadays that inhibits the fact that you only get 7 hours, or is there like a specific purpose? That's what I'm trying to get, or trying to understand, I should say. Because like I understand that concept, but that only makes sense if it's like related to productivity, right? People tend to get more daylight when working if we move the time. Yeah, but when working, do you mean like working in an office? Like working in an office where there's light, or like I'm just trying to get like what the understanding is. Like I know that at some point that was an issue. At some point that was a huge issue, trying to get those hours. But now it doesn't seem like now it doesn't seem like it matters, right? Because like for example, this is just an anecdote, but for example, I am working here in an office, obviously. So like 1 hour isn't gonna make a difference to me in terms of my job, right? Back in the World War II, we had double daylight time. Yeah, but I guess you could make the argument that it makes sense maybe back then, but now it just doesn't. Now it just doesn't make sense at all. That's because you get nearer 12 hours of day and night. Yeah, maybe, but I also I get that, but what I'm trying to understand is if I am in your place, right, in your area. How is it that much different nowadays? Because we all, well, enough of us work in an office, we have streetlights, we have different technologies now that don't really require the daylight, like unless you're like a farmer maybe. But other than that, I mean, offices we've got offices that have, light. We also have stores and all these places have, and this is true, lights. So I'm not sure like what the impetus is nowadays, unless it like specifically pertains to you. You also have to factor in the temperature and weather in winter, I guess. I'm not familiar with any of it, so. We also use less electricity. Well, all right, this came up in my feed. So I'm curious as to what this take is going to be. We use I mean, I don't know. I don't live there, so I'm not gonna pretend that I know. All right, bud. Let's see what you got.
So this is coming in the news today here on Sunday, March 6th. It appears that Vladimir Putin is telling Ukraine to stop fighting against Russian forces. Now, as you guys know, they came in and there's videos of them trying to tell people, and Putin did this as well, that, lay down your arms and we won't attack you. And in Putin's mind, he, I guess, seems to think that Ukraine is Russian. Ukraine has never been Russian. It never will be Russian. But he wants it to be part of Russia again. He wants to go back to not the Soviet era. He actually wants to go back to the Russian Empire, because during the Soviet Union, actually, Ukraine was actually a independent Soviet republic, right? It wasn't part of the empire. So he was very mad at Lenin and Stalin and Khrushchev for giving Ukraine independence and giving them land. And so he's telling them to stop fighting. Now, anti-war protests are really growing, and I'm going to do a separate video on that. But there's something like 4,500 people, apparently just on Sunday, detained for protesting against the war
Just on
in
Sunday?
Russia.
Oh, this is on March
Russian
6th.
President Vladimir Putin said on Sunday his...
Oh, I should have paid attention. Like, this is the thing about covering breaking news on YouTube, because like sometimes it'll come up on your recommended weeks later, but nonetheless.
Campaign in Ukraine was going to plan and would not end until Kiev stopped fighting, as efforts to evacuate 200,000 people from the heavily bombarded city of Mariupol fell apart for a second day in a row. Most people trapped in the port city are sleeping in bomb shelters to escape more than 6 days of...
Yeah, I saw that. That is some scary stuff, my friend, because you know that she's probably gonna be disappeared. She's probably gonna be disappeared or arrested or just not gonna have a job, secluded. That's that's a oh man. That's I feel bad for her. Because man, nothing scarier. Nothing scarier.
near constant shelling by encircling Russian forces that has cut off food, water, power, and heating supplies, according to the Ukrainian authorities. That's kind of how you know they're losing. Originally, the plan seemed to be to encircle Kiev and take it over.
Well, I don't know if the Russian military is going to lose in the long run. The issue isn't whether or not they can take Ukraine. The issue is whether or not they're able to hold it, which that is a whole other facet, as we know, right? The possibility, the probability of the Russians being able to quote take over or win, I guess would be the term. The battle for Ukraine, the war for Ukraine, is just it's just obvious. They're going to I mean they just by sheer numbers, whether or not they have been failing so far. It's just a numbers game. I just saw another photo taken by the Azov battalion. Looks like they got another Russian general. Okay. They're flattening the country so no one will want it. Yeah, that's usually when you know things are desperate. This has been the MO for quite some time, right? If you don't if you don't bend the knee, then they will just start flattening the country. I think that's been a modus operandi, if that's the term. So yeah, anyways, the point being is a lot of military analysts, including ours, have been saying that it's not a matter of the Russian military being able to win or lose, right? Because it's clear just by sheer numbers that they can win just by sheer numbers. The question then becomes, will they be able to hold it? Which the answer to that is no. It's called Blitzkrieg? No, Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg would involve a very fast shock and awe, which is what we called it, tactic, and that's not what's happening here. This is more of a siege. This is more reminiscent of a siege because they're encircling. That's right, in Chechnya as well. Particularly, that one was particularly in Chechnya. So what they're doing is more of a siege, right? Because they're encircling the entire, they're encircling Kiev or Kiev, and cutting off supplies and things like that. It's effectively, slowly strangling the cities. So that's their tactic. If that doesn't work, then they're just gonna continue to flatten the area.
Capital
until they
and that failed, and so now they're
until they stop.
Focusing on Kharkiv and now Mariupol and all these other cities. To me, that's just like, oh yeah, we took the L. But it goes on here to actually say, Putin made his demand for Kyiv to end the fighting in a phone call with Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan, who appealed for a ceasefire. Putin told Erdogan he was ready for dialogue with Ukraine and foreign partners, but any attempt to draw out negotiation would fail, a Kremlin statement said. Russian media said Putin also held almost 2 hours of talks on Sunday with French President Emmanuel Macron. Macron told Putin he was concerned about a possible imminent attack on the southern Ukrainian city of Odessa, Macron's office said. And so what it seems like Macron has been trying to do is he's really been trying to be the dialogue guy. He's the one he's the European leader who's really trying to take the dialogue route, and he's trying to,
South of
even
Kyiv
before
is
the
still
invasion,
open and
he was
supplies
trying
getting
to
through.
have a
Yeah, there's some that are still open, but that's their goal. That's their goal. If you look at the map, it's like a circle, attempting to be a circle.
separate response from the United States and open up a dialogue with Putin. Hasn't really been doing anything. Does that mean it was a bad idea? I don't know. I don't think we really know yet necessarily, but it doesn't seem to have gotten anywhere, at least so far. But, it says Putin told Erdogan he was ready for dialogue with Ukraine and foreign partners, but any attempt to draw out negotiation would fail. So what it seems like to me, I mean, they've been trying to do this dialogue, but it seems like the only dialogue that's going to work for
They're doing these dialogues, I think, as a way to stall. Ukraine desperately needs that time, because I don't see these dialogue talks getting anywhere. And a lot of these proposals are just non-starters to begin with.
Putin is if Ukraine stops fighting and essentially just gives in. That's what it seems like Putin wants here, at the very least.
Which is a
So
non-starter.
I think he will, the question still is, what exactly is the objective? We know that he's very angry at Lenin mostly, and also Stalin and Khrushchev, for giving Ukraine land and making them a country, because he
Okay.
feels like they were never a real country. They're just supposed to be part of the Russian Empire, even though that's not true. And so he wants it to be part of Russia. So does that mean that he wants to annex the country of Ukraine and make it part of the Russian Federation? Or does it mean that he actually wants to just create a puppet government in Ukraine? So it's very unclear.
In my opinion, either or would work for Putin, I guess. Either or. So does Russia, so they can overcome their logistics, maybe. But I don't know. I think that if it doesn't work, if it looks like it's not going well, they can just start flattening out the land. They don't need to do any of this. They can just flatten the whole place and be done with it. They're trying to avoid that, because in their eyes, they still feel like they're gonna have that type of victory. But once they realize that that's not gonna happen, that these folks aren't just going to submit, they're just gonna start flattening it, and it'll be over. Well, I saw a report that Russia is asking China for supplies, especially MRE, like combat rations. I heard a report like that, but we're getting a lot of conflicting reports, because some folks are saying that this is true. Russia's denying it, China's denying it, but we are. I don't know. I've not had like a strong confirmation that that is true, because we keep getting conflicting reports.
Clear, but it seems like the minimum standard for what he desires is at the very least a puppet government in Ukraine. So one that is obviously his government, but it's just it's independent in name only, essentially. So it seems like that's what he's looking for at the least, and so he's telling them to stop fighting. Ukrainians will not stop fighting, because Ukrainians really hate Russia a lot, because they've obviously subjected them to their rule for like a couple hundred years or whatever. So they don't like them. There have been lots of systemic attempts by Russian and Soviet leaders to wipe out the Ukrainian identity as a whole. The Ukrainian language, they've made rules to try to wipe out the Ukrainian language, stop the usage of the language.
Bro, stop hitting your mic, dude. My goodness, it's a good mic. Ukraine will be another Afghanistan for Russia. Yeah. I mean, like, that's the whole point, right? Winning the war is one thing. Holding the country, occupying it, is a whole other issue in and of itself.
Soviet leaders attempted to funnel a bunch of Russians into Ukraine in order to turn Ukraine into being more Russian. And so Ukrainians have an identity. They have their own language. They have their own identity.
I believe that to be mostly true, I think. I'm not sure you'll be able to shell the Ukrainians into submission. You could do it to a city, but it takes time. And I don't think the Russians have that time. Maybe. I'm sitting here playing armchair general, my friend. I could be 1,000% wrong. What real sanctions? That's the issue. Like, what sanctions? What sanctions, despite it being one of the harshest sanctions we've ever done as a united front, what sanctions have stopped this? It's not working. It's not working because Putin doesn't care. The only people that suffer are the Russian citizens. You're not punishing the people responsible in this manner. Like, the sanctions have been one of the most toughest sanctions and one of the most united fronts that we've ever done. ever to a country. I think we've done more sanctions to the Russians than even, to my understanding, and I could be 1,000% wrong, even more than North Korea, and yet they're still going. They're still going. It's not a deterrent. It was never meant to be. They're not stopping because Putin doesn't care. I think Putin. We're underestimating the little amount of care that Putin has for his people. Blockade all trade and finance in and out of Russia. We have done it to the most extent that we can, but yeah, and so is Russia. The sanctions aren't meant to stop them. The sanctions we've done to North Korea have not deterred them in any way, shape, or form. Right? They're still there. In fact, it kind of redoubles down. So, like, I just don't agree that the sanctions have worked. I think we need to figure out a better strategy, one that would actually bring an end to this war. Instead of, I mean, maybe in the long run, but I'm just worried about the price that it's going to, the price that it's going to take for not only the Russian people, but because of all of this, there have been other countries that have been affected by this as well. It turns out, and this is true, Russia is a huge wheat exporter, I want to say, and food supplies have been very, very tight, and this has just exacerbated this issue. Is kept going because it suits China. Well, maybe, but we've sanctioned them to all heck, and it has not really deterred them. DPRK keeps South Korea under control. Are you sure about that? It's so awful. Yeah, it is. It is because it's not Putin suffering. Putin's fine. Do you really think Putin gives a crap about all these sanctions? No. You keep supporting the UA and equip and support the UA. That's how you do it. Yeah, you make it so costly that that they eventually will not be able. They'll come to the realization that they cannot hold Ukraine. That's the way you do it. Otherwise, I mean, like the real answer, the most idealistic answer, obviously, in an alternate universe, would be negotiations. Would be legitimate, good faith diplomacy. But right, because it's not our job. We're not the world police. We can't just because these folks act in this way, we can't just go to every single inch of the earth and tell people what to do. We can't just tell China what to do. We can't just tell the DPRK what to do. We can't tell Russia what to do. We can only be like, look, we've got to have a diplomatic solution to this. Again, this is an idealistic world that just is fantasy in my head, but that would be ideal. We don't stop China from supporting the DPRK in Russia because it's not our job. It's not our job. China's the world Al Capone. Wait, China? That would be that. In this analogy, China is what? Shaking us down? Are you sure? Are you sure it's China shaking us down? I disagree. I disagree, my friend. I think it all comes back down to business. Money. Profit. Profit above all. Remember, there are no principles under capitalism except profit. So, if you need to go to China and get cheap labor that you cannot do here, you'll move your corporation there. To which then I ask, who's taking advantage of who? If you want my opinion, I think we're both pretty much mutually accepting of the fact that we're just so intertwined. They actually did remove RT from YouTube, and now the content I watch is gone. Oh man, did they actually like axe RT? Like for real? Because like last time I read that they just demonetized RT. But they actually removed it? Jesus. Oh, it says not available in your country. Wow. Okay, so they blocked it. That's Jesus, that's a good meme. China has a massive population with a huge excess of male / I don't know what that means or why that's relevant. Anyways, my point is, China isn't taking advantage of us. We, our corporations, have been quite comfortable with taking advantage of, of China's cheap labor and have moved corporations over there because it makes them profit. Because it gives them one more penny of profit, which is the name of the game, folks. China does not have enough women to love that. I have no idea what that even what that even means, or why that's even relevant. Anyways.
And so that's why they're going to continue fighting against Russia. And despite being extremely overmatched, of course, they have, NATO, U.S. intelligence, CIA intelligence, as well as a bunch of equipment coming from NATO countries as well.
Well, I don't know about NATO intelligence. Is that characterization true? Or is it just certain countries who happen to be in NATO are participating in the, giving of intelligence? How do you know these things and why does it matter? I don't get it. How do you know these things and why does it matter?
As well as sanctions that are being implemented by many countries and now even companies, right? And so with that, I think that they're going to stand a very good chance. How long is it going to take for Putin to pull out if it's not going well? I really don't know. I would imagine if it goes on for longer than 3 weeks, at that point, it kind of has to be a situation of like, okay, are you really going to keep going? Are you really going to keep trying to do this invasion?
No, they're just going to level the place. They're going to attempt to level the place. I feel like we already had CIA in Russia and Ukraine, and that's how they leaked the invasion. Maybe we have CIA everywhere, and to be fair, so does Russia. Yeah, we're past 3 weeks, so I think at this point they're either going to have to make decisions here, where they're going to get either a little bit more desperate, or they're going to come to the realization that this is just not going the way they wanted to, although they keep claiming that it is and it's on schedule, which I don't see. I think that's a lie. But okay, buddy. I guess maybe in their eyes, maybe an alternative reality, it's going well for them. I don't know.
Happens domestically at home in Russia. But what we can see is they're starting to just attack civilians and just bombing areas. Like they're just, I guess, just bombing buildings and stuff like that, which is just cheap, essentially.
It's not just cheap. It's meant. It's a intimidation tactic. It's shock and well, it's not shock and awe. It's meant to break. Oh, Kitty, get out of there! Oi, hold on, folks. Kitty, get out of there, please. Hold on, folks. We've got a naughty cat in studio, and I don't want her to knock down my camera, so hold on. That was scary. My goodness. I thought Kitty was gonna knock over my camera or lights. That would have been, that would have been a good meme. Live, too. How about all those Russian moms whose sons are not coming home alive? Yeah. That's a very true point. That is a very true point.
But
What about not just those folks? Not just the Russian conscripts. The Russian people who are being strangled at this point. Most of which, or at least a good chunk of which do not support this war anyways.
But it's not looking good for them, but this appears to be what Putin's objective is, but we're not 100% clear yet. But I think that the number one goal of his is to get them to submit to him. He wants Ukraine to submit to Russia and Putin. That's what it seems like he wants them to do at the bare minimum.
All right, that's it. Someone ban someone ban twitch.tv/heme. Quick. Do we have a That's a good meme. That's a good meme. How's it going straight forward? Oh, man. Anyways, I mean, yeah. Although I didn't get that much information other than what we've gone over, right? Putin's goal is obviously to break the spirit of Ukraine, to make them submit, which is probably not going to happen. I would say that bombing civilians or bombing civilian areas does the opposite, in my opinion. But, anyways, that was an interesting video. Check out the Progressive Voice if you want to see that. I posted the link up there. And good. That's good to hear, my friend. Okay, switching gears here. Ginny Thomas acknowledges she attended the January 6th rally but played no role in planning it. Huh. Conservative activist Virginia Ginny Thomas said in an interview published on Monday that although she attended a rally on January 6th, she played no role in planning events that day and that she doesn't involve her husband, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, in the political work she does pushing conservative causes. I mean, listen. I'm sorry. But I'm gonna press X to doubt that you don't involve your husband, a Supreme Court justice. Not only that, a very conservative Supreme Court justice, and you don't involve or ask or get any opinions from, or give any opinions to your husband. Nothing. You just don't talk about it. Try looking up YouTuber a show called Speak the Truth. You can send me that link via Whispers. Non-binary superpower gave me a article. Not an article, a Twitter. Squatters have had taken over a Russian oligarch's place, which is pretty funny. Anyways. Yeah, I'm sorry, but it's very hard to believe that there's absolutely no communication, no influence, nothing happening, whether you realize it or not, whether it's intentional, whether you're planning stuff with your husband or not, just by virtue of being your husband. Just by virtue of being, your husband, it's very hard to believe that you just don't discuss anything. It's just very hard to believe that you just don't talk about anything, like nothing political. That's just like not a thing at the house, or what? You're not going to discuss your ideas, or just even if it's, again, not like direct. It's just very hard to believe that none of this influences what's going on. Whether it's Clarence Thomas influencing her politics, or her politics, vice versa. I don't know how that dynamic works, but it's just very hard for me to believe that there's no influence whatsoever. Every time I watch the news, they never talk about diplomatic options, and they never talk about what Putin wants. They keep pumping it up. Well, the thing is, like, we kind of know what Putin wants, right? He kind of told us, right? He kind of told us in a 1 hour diatribe about, with a kind of blood and soil argument. I don't know. It's just bizarre. That was very bizarre. But the point is, I think we know what Putin wants, but it's our job. It's our job to do whatever possible, to do anything possible, as much as humanly possible, to arrive at a diplomatic option as much as possible. And you know what? If anything, if he doesn't agree, then that's on him, but it's not going to be on us. Hardly anyone, I bet, actually agrees with going to war, but that doesn't matter since we're ran by an MIC. True. Consent to war is manufactured. That's also true. But yeah, like, the reality is, or I guess ideally should be, that we should always have as much of a diplomatic approach as possible, at least here, right? At least on our end. That's just my position. War bad. I don't know how much simpler it can be than that. War bad, and you should be doing everything in your power to make it stop or never happen in the first place. That's it. You should be trying every single diplomatic avenue on your end. She attended a rally on January 6th but played no role in planning the events, and as she doesn't involve her husband, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, in the political work she does pushing conservative causes. In a rare interview with conservative publication The Washington Free Beacon, comes as progressives and some legal ethics experts see potential conflicts with Thomas's activism and her husband's work on the Supreme Court. Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Hardly anyone, I bet, agrees with actually going to war. Oh yeah, even here, and even like this Russian population, nobody wants to go to war. It turns out war is horrifying. They point to specifically to a recent January order when the court, over a dissent of Clarence Thomas, cleared the way for the release of presidential records from the Trump White House to a congressional committee investigating the U.S. Capitol attack. In recent weeks, media outlets, including CNN, have run stories exploring Ginny Thomas's long-term activism and calls for Justice Clarence Thomas to recuse. Federal recusal law says that any justice shall disqualify if their impartiality might reasonably be questioned, said Gabe Roth of Fix the Court, a group seeking more transparency from Supreme Court justices. That would be interesting. Here, Virginia Thomas has attended the rally on the Ellipse. She is close to those who have been subpoenaed by the committee, and she is involved in several groups that have cast doubt on the results of the 2020 election. Yeah, like, that is just wild. That is just wild that's like a thing. Okay. But in the interview, Ginny Thomas said that the legal lane is my husband's. She seemed to distance herself from the January 6th events. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter even if January 6th never happened. Even if January 6th never happened, how can you tell me that there isn't some type of dynamic going on between a husband and wife who have been married for a long time at this point. The husband is a Supreme Court justice, a very conservative Supreme Court justice at that, and the wife is a conservative activist. I mean, there's nothing. There's no. You're telling me that there's no conflict of interest whatsoever? That seems strange. I disagree. I don't think we're nowhere near that. There's just no route where we abolish it, like, recently. I don't know what the solution would be to that then. Yeah, anyone else would get fired. Like, can you imagine? Like so many married couple, we shared the same ideals, principles, and aspirations for America, Thomas told the Free Beacon, but we have our own separate careers and our own ideas and opinions too. Yeah, which, again, you're telling me that none of these get shared? None? None of these get shared? No opinions get thrown around? Nothing like that? You just don't talk? You just don't talk? It's such an important role and they're like immune to being retired. Right. So then at that point you would say, well, maybe we should have rotating court justices. Maybe we should have different parameters, which is fine. Clarence doesn't discuss his work with me and I don't involve him in my work. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to press X to doubt on that one. I'm gonna press X to doubt on that one. Just because, obviously Clarence Thomas isn't discussing every single aspect or every single case or every detail of every single case. Or nothing at all. Again, you can't tell me that the discussions that you have with your wife doesn't have a single bit of influence, and knowing that she is a conservative activist, it's just unfathomable to me that there's no type of conversation going on, even if he never discusses a single detail. Even if he doesn't discuss a single detail of any case whatsoever, opinions, I'm sure, and opinions get shared and thrown around, and politics of each other kind of bounce around. There's got to be some influence, right? I mean, you can't quite possibly tell me that there's just no conflict of interest there. I just don't think like 6 people should make the biggest decisions, especially hold Fox, abolish and do something else, recreate a new system where the people are involved. I mean, so what do? I mean, where is the framework for this to happen? The best thing that I think that within the confines of what we are right now, we could use the methods and power to make sure that the folks who end up there, because they didn't just magically appear there, right? The people that were elected appointed them, right? Or we could put some parameters, like maybe term limits. Term limits could possibly reduce that, or balance that out, or have a more open and functional legislative branch that could be more democratic and be able to pass legislation and kind of create a more counterbalance between the 3 branches. I'm not sure what the solution is here. Clarence doesn't discuss his work with me, and I don't involve him in my work. It doesn't matter. Your opinions and what you talk about do have large influence. Supreme Court justices largely make their own decisions whether to recuse themselves, which again, maybe there should be parameters, or like a independent kind of deal, where if there's an obvious, conflict, then there should be something to step in, right? Acting cautiously, because if they were to step away, no other judge can take their place. The rule. Critics say the system is flawed and there should be more transparency and accountability. Damn. Yeah. In the interview, Ginny Thomas, who runs a political consulting firm, stressed that she is going to continue her role as a political activist. If you're going to be true to yourself and your professional calling, you can never be intimidated, chilled, or censored by what the press and others say. Which, again, I'm sorry, but I have a hard time believing that there's no influence whatsoever. Benjamin P. Dixon, rating with a party of 39. Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. Sam Line the Kind Dragon. How's it going? Welcome, everybody. If you guys don't know who we are, Siscat, how's it going? If you guys don't know who we are A Difficult Truth. We do news and politics Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, and join us for Saturday Catterdays. If you guys stick around, you might see one kitty cat today. Got her sleeping over here. She was being a bit naughty earlier, trying to get behind my camera. That was that was a hair-raising moment there. Siscat, thank you. Hey, what's up? How's it going? It's ADT's time in the algorithm matrix. Please make sure you follow and refresh. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, folks. And again, if you guys enjoy the content, don't forget to hit that follow button. It really does help us out. And as Siscat just posted there, you get 5 free emotes, including Vaquita the cat, which we'll put on stream at some point, okay? We'll put on stream. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, the Benjamin P. Dixon Show. If you guys don't already, please go show some support. Twitch.tv/The Benjamin P. Dixon Show. They have an awesome Monday stream, Monday show. And you can also check them out on YouTube. So please make sure you do that. You can check them out on YouTube. You can check them out on Twitch in the AM. And sometimes they pop in the Majority Report. And the Majority Report and the Nomiki Show. So make sure you check all those folks out. Yes, Twitch, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Act TV. What? They're on Act TV? Nice. 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 So go follow them. Show some support. Wait. Oops. Come on. Wait, did I do this right? Yeah, I think I did. No Benjamin P. Dixon Show on Mondays right now. Gotcha. Okay, so next, so Tuesday. So Tuesdays. Starting on Tuesdays. Gotcha, thank you. Oh, so it's a rerun. Okay, cool. Gotcha. Folks, please go show some support, alright? That was very, very kind of the Benjamin P. Dixon Show. I appreciate that. For those of you just coming in, we are going over the conflict of interest between Ginny Thomas, which is Clarence Thomas's wife, and it's just impossible, like I was saying, that there's just no way that these folks don't influence each other, right? I mean, they're husband and wife who have been together for quite some time, and you're telling me that there's just no exchange of ideas at the dinner table? There's no opinions given at the dinner table? You know, that's just hard to believe. If you're going to be true to yourself and professional calling, you can never be intimidated, chilled, or censored by what the press or others say. Can you give an example? She also clarified her actions on January 6th, saying that she attended a rally but returned home before President Trump took the stage at noon. Rioting broke out after that. I was disappointed and frustrated that there was violence that happened following a peaceful gathering of Trump supporters on the ellipse on January 6th. She added that she played no role with those who were planning and leading the events. There are stories in the press suggesting I paid or arranged for buses. I did not. No, but you have been involved in, numerous political activism pushing the idea. I'm heading to nap. See y'all later today. Thank you so much, Samuline the Kind Dragon. You have a good nap. You have a good nap. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Take care. There are important and legitimate substantive questions about achieving goals like electoral integrity. Okay. Can you explain to me then why you continue to push this idea that there's some massive problems with election integrity? Where is the evidence to suggest that it's such a pernicious problem that's just everywhere that needs to be fixed? And the follow-up question, where are the issues with the fail-safe mechanisms that we have when it does happen? The answer to that is, of course, there are no issues. Racial equality, political accountability, that a democratic system like ours needs to be able to discuss and debate rationally on the political square. Okay, but that's based on the fact that's based on the idea that you would be a legitimate, rational actor. But if you're pushing this idea that there are massive problems with the election, if you're pushing this idea that there's massive electoral fraud, massive voter fraud, if you're participating in activist groups, I guess, pushing this idea, then that's not really rational, because you need evidence to suggest that your conclusion even has merit to begin with. You're not acting in a rational manner, my friend. You're living in an alternate reality. Since the rally, she has signed a letter to House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy urging the Republican conference to remove... Right, this is the same person who just, a paragraph above, talked about how you want to be able to discuss and debate. And in a couple of paragraphs above that, you were talking about something about, something about censorship? Something about censorship? That's a good meme. Since the rally, she has signed a letter to House Minority Leader to urging the Republican conference to remove both GOP representatives Liz Cheney, even though despite the fact that she voted over 90% with Donald Trump's agenda, and Adam Kinzinger of Illinois, due to their, quote, egregious actions. The egregious actions. Jesus. As members of the House of Representatives Subcommittee investigating the insurrection, I mean, like, if she thinks that, violence is bad and she thinks that the whole thing was a disaster, why not have an investigation to kind of find out how or where we got to this position, right? Wouldn't that be something that you would welcome then, to maybe get some answers and then reform your strategy based on that? Because if you truly believe that this was just absolutely unacceptable, wouldn't you want that to be investigated? That's a good meme. See, this is the thing. Like, these people are just constantly living in this 1984 doublethink, where they simultaneously cry about something about censorship, something about being able to discuss and debate rationally in the political square, and then supporting the censorships and removal of Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. also, simultaneously, being disappointed and frustrated that there was violence, and simultaneously calling the investigation into said violence, into this insurrection, as egregious actions. I mean, which one is it? Did you not agree, or do you agree with what happened? Did she go into the Capitol and not get charged? No, she didn't. According to what we understand, she did not go to the Capitol when all of that went down. So what we understand is that she went to the rally and then left before President Trump's speech. So that was before the insurrection. Yeah, so you can't have it both ways, my friend. You can't have it both ways. Cheney and Kissinger are serving at the request of House Speaker Pelosi. Well, remember, the original deal was supposed to be a completely bipartisan, straight down the middle, 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, both have equal subpoena power to investigate this. Yeah, and this is the same person again who's crying about the ability to discuss and debate rationally in the political square. That's a good meme. That's a good meme. Every time these folks say one thing, they always mean the other. They always mean the opposite. Nato is live. Shoot me that link, please. Social media post obtained by Slate shows her cheering on January 6th rally that preceded the attack, though she later made clear that she had published those posts before it turned violent. Again, this is supporting the idea because the whole point of the January 6th rally was to stop the steal. In other words, she was cheering on the fact that she was cheering on the folks who were basically disputing and therefore shaking the integrity of our electoral system without a shred of evidence. And you're telling me that this person who has been married to a Supreme Court justice for decades at this point, for a very long time, you're telling me that they don't discuss any ideas, that there's no conflict of interest here going on here? Really? I love these ads. This is part of the charm. I love these ads. I'm getting ads for pants. I don't know if you've all seen, but I wear basketball shorts for the 99% of times, okay? Nato is live? What? Can you post a link? Non-binary superpower. I saw your post last earlier today. That's a good meme. Is it live on YouTube? Anyways, the person who is has been a very prominent figure, or has been around, encouraging this idea, send it to me, Thandero, or non-binary superpower. I would appreciate that. So this person has been a political activist who is continuously pushing and up to and including cheering this Stop the Steal rally, and is a spouse of the Supreme Court justice. You're telling me that there's no conflict of interest here? Nothing? Is this it?
We have also seen that Russia has supported the Assad regime in Syria and helped to facilitate the use of chemical weapons several times in Syria. And any use of chemical weapons is absolutely unacceptable. And therefore it is also extremely important that Russia understands that it is unacceptable if they consider any use of chemical weapons, and we are also very vigilant about the possibility of them trying to stage some kind of pretext false flag operation to provide an excuse for any type of use of chemical weapons.
Okay, we'll go to NPR,
What?
Deutsche Welle, Lady in Pink.
Holy yikes, Batman.
Thank you very much. Just
This is-
somewhat of a follow-up on Natalia's question.
Okay.
She was asking what NATO would do, and whether this changes your red lines. So, as you say that you are looking at NATO's military posture again, is this something that you would consider changing? You have said that this would be a war crime, and we know that simply warning Russia against doing something is not enough of a deterrent to stop it. So, if NATO knows, or if NATO sees that a chemical attack could take place, and you say that's a war crime, would NATO consider changing the fact that it would not intervene?
No, NATO
in
cannot
such a
intervene.
threat? Thank you.
Our main responsibility is to protect and defend all NATO allies. It is important that Russia understands that we are there to do exactly that. We have conveyed a very clear message to Russia about that we also see when they try to stage pretexts for the use of chemical weapons. We have seen that they, throughout this crisis, have tried to create different kinds of false flag operations to try to provide excuses for the use of force. We saw that in the lead-up to the intervention, and now we have seen them accusing Ukraine and also NATO allies developing chemical weapons. And that's an absolute lie, and therefore it also makes us a bit concerned about the possibility that they are actually planning to do that. The President of the United States and other allies also made it very clear that if they use chemical weapons, there will be a high price to pay. But I will not speculate about any military response from the NATO side, except for saying very clear that NATO's main responsibility is to make sure that we defend and protect all allies.
That's a bit of a better answer. Ooh, my goodness.
Just behind, yeah. No, just... no,
Yikes.
okay. Frankfurt Allgemeine Zeitung.
Thomas Kutschka, Frankfurt Allgemeine Zeitung. Secretary General, after the demise of the INF Treaty, it's been NATO's position that the Russian deployment of SSC-8 will not be reciprocated by the deployment of medium or intermediate nuclear-capable missile systems. In the light of the Russian aggression against Ukraine and President Putin's threats, nuclear threats to NATO,
Whoa.
in your view, does this stance need to be...
I don't think Putin directly threatened NATO. I think he kind of just dangled it around for everyone. He didn't specifically name anybody.
Because the INF Treaty, agreed in 1987, banned all intermediate range weapon systems. Then over the last years, over actually several years, we have seen that Russia has deployed a new missile which violates this treaty, and then that led to the demise of the treaty a few years ago. We have stated from the NATO, and Russia has deployed these weapons over now several years, the SSC-8. We have made it clear that we will not mirror what Russia does. So we have no plans to deploy nuclear-capable intermediate-range land-based systems in Europe.
Very good answer.
At the same time, we need to be able to make sure that we are able to respond and protect all allies, also in a new security environment where Russia has deployed more nuclear-capable missiles. And therefore, we have to do many things at the same time. We need to strengthen our air and missile defense. We are doing that. We need to invest more in advanced conventional capabilities, including fifth-generation aircraft. And I welcome the German decision to invest in fifth-generation aircraft. We need also to increase the readiness and our ability to monitor, detect. And of course, we also need to make sure that NATO's nuclear deterrent remain safe and secure and effective. And that's exactly what we're doing when we are now making sure that we exercise and ensure the effectiveness of our nuclear deterrent.
Jesus Christ. Well, aren't you thinly veiling also doing the same thing? Holy shikes. Bro. Okay. Didn't Biden mention he has NATO troops on the border? They moved several thousand troops and I believe certain anti-missile defense batteries to I want to say Poland, but as long as they stay within NATO, it's okay. Yeah, so I don't, yeah, he's moved several thousand troops to the NATO, like in NATO.
Including with President Zelensky throughout the whole crisis and also to lead up to the crisis. I think it's important that leaders of NATO countries, of European member states are engaging closely with President Zelensky. We will have the defense minister of Ukraine attending the NATO defense ministerial tomorrow by video link. And therefore I think it's important that we, at all levels, in different formats, engage and meet with the Ukrainian political leadership.
Interfax.
Dank u wel. Thank you, Interfax Ukraine, Irina Sommer. This morning, some mass media spread information about possible extraordinary summit, NATO summit, next week. Can you please confirm this? And second, technical question. According to my information, it took for NATO bureaucracy 1.5 weeks to implement Ukrainian request for fuel. Can you please comment on this too? Thank you.
Well, NATO allies are providing and have provided a lot of different types of support to Ukraine. Some of this is channeled through the NATO framework. Some are provided bilaterally. And for us, it is important that we provide support on short notice and that we provide critical support which Ukraine needs. So overall, I think the message is that over many years, leading up to invasion, but also after invasion, allies have been very quick in stepping up and providing support. And again, I'm a bit reluctant to go into all the details about exactly how and where and when, but the overall picture is that allies are providing significant support, and they've done some on short notice, and that's different types of weapons, but also that includes fuel. Well, NATO allies have consulted and coordinated closely over several weeks, both in the lead up to the invasion, but also after the invasion. We had a virtual summit just one day after, and we had different ministerial meetings, also extraordinary ministerial meetings, and we will have an extraordinary defense ministerial meeting tomorrow. Then we are able to convene also a NATO summit with all the NATO leaders on short notice, but I cannot go into more details about that now.
Okay, we'll take a couple of questions online. We'll go to Jutarnyi list, Augustin Pajokai.
Yes, thank you, Anna. Secretary General, I have a question which many people in Croatia are asking. How is it possible that a drone of 6 tons heavy enters NATO airspace and flies for around an hour and crashed in the capital of a NATO member state, while you are so vigilant in defending NATO sky? And do you know something more, whether it really was a drone without a weapon or something? Because the Prime Minister and Minister of Defense said that there was an explosive device in this flying object that crashed in Zagreb. Thank you.
Well, I spoke with Prime Minister Plenković on Sunday, and we are working together to establish all the facts. But the preliminary indications and information we have is that this was an unarmed drone, and that the drone was off course, and that it ran out of fuel and crashed outside Zagreb, or crashed in Croatia. But we will have more confirmed.
Oi. Chill out. Jesus Christ. Do you know how many times Russia has attempted to violate or skirt the lines of US air territory, and you know what happens? They get escorted out, or they get told to remove yourself from airspace, or they're watched. Relax, okay?
Air and missile defense tracked the flight of the drone that later crashed in Zagreb. But again, we will make sure that
I think it's
the different allies that were involved share all the information, and then we can establish all the facts about what this happened. I think, if anything, it demonstrates the need to further strengthen integration, further strengthen information sharing among allies, and also to invest more and upgrade everything from radars to our presence of air and missile defense systems, and that's exactly what we do, also by deploying more Patriots in the eastern part of the alliance.
Okay, we'll go to Robert Lupito, Calea Europeană.
Thank you very much for taking my question. Mr. Secretary General, I want to ask you whether there will be a speed-up process for this establishment of the NATO battle group in Romania. And also, since you mentioned about a reset in NATO's defense posture after Russia's invasion into Ukraine, do you think that this reset will also mean an unitary approach, both for the northern part of the eastern flank and both for the southern part of the eastern flank? We will see the same level of troops and defense commitment in the Baltics, in Poland, and also in Romania and Bulgaria? Thank you very much.
So we have already increased significantly our presence in the eastern part of the alliance, also in the Black Sea region, with more troops. I went to
that is true.
Romania a couple of weeks ago, and I met with US forces, German forces, and other forces there who have actually increased their presence. And now the lead elements of the NATO response force have been deployed to Romania, French troops, and this demonstrates that there is already a significant increased military presence in the eastern part of the alliance. We speak about 40,000 forces on high readiness and the direct NATO command. Then we have the national forces. We have also bilateral arrangements. So in total, this is a quite significant presence, both in Romania and the southeast of the alliance, but also in the Baltic region. This is our immediate response. And as I said, the battle groups is under establishment with the French-led VJTF element. Then what we will discuss at the defense ministerial meeting is not only the immediate response and the need for support to Ukraine, but we will also look at the need to reset our presence, our deterrence and defense posture in light of the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the integration of Russian and Belarusian forces. That will take some more time, because I think we need to assess the different options.
I also think that this framing of NATO forces or NATO needs to continue to provide support to Ukraine and all this other stuff, I don't think that they should really be wording it this way. It should be more along the lines like, if individual countries, if individual NATO members are giving aid, that is a whole separate deal than NATO itself providing the aid directly. It just seems kind of weird. Remember, it was designed to be a defensive alliance, not anything else. It's designed to, whoever is in that alliance, it's meant to, protect each other, supposedly. Allegedly. What? That's it? Yep, I think that's it. Okay. I honestly thought it was going to be a lot longer. Okay. I really hope it doesn't, stoke tensions. The last thing we need is that, right? The very last thing we need. But I'm sure we'll hear about it later. Yeah. This is so... Was this on YouTube as well? Because, like... Maybe we could catch part of it. No, this is not streaming on YouTube. Oh, maybe I didn't look up, like, the, Ah? Yeah, I don't see it. If you guys find it, let me know. I personally don't see it on C-SPAN. I personally don't see it on C-SPAN. Yeah, I'm sure we're gonna get a little bit more details at the beginning. That's so weird that I couldn't just, like, restart the live stream. But that's fine. Oh, you have it? What? Send it to me. Where? Oh, really?
Save now on the season's top picks.
What?
Ministers will meet tomorrow at the defining moment for our security. President Putin's brutal invasion of Ukraine. NATO defense ministers will meet tomorrow at the defining moment for our security. President Putin's brutal invasion of Ukraine is causing death and destruction every day. It has shocked the world and shaken the international order. For months, we have exposed Russia's long list of lies. They claimed they did not plan to invade Ukraine, but they did. They claimed they were withdrawing their troops, but they sent in even more. They claim to be protecting civilians, but they are killing civilians. Now, they are making absurd claims about biological labs and chemical weapons in Ukraine. This is just another lie, and we are concerned that Moscow could stage a false flag operation, possibly including chemical weapons. The Ukrainian people are fighting bravely, defending their homes and their future, and we must support them. Tomorrow we will be joined by the Ukrainian Defense Minister Alexei Resnikov and our other partners Georgia, Finland, Sweden and the European Union. The whole world has condemned this senseless war. NATO allies, the European Union and other countries have introduced unprecedented sanctions on Russia. For many years, NATO allies have trained tens of thousands of Ukrainian troops. Many of them are now fighting on the front lines. Allies have also provided significant quantities of critical equipment, including anti-tank and air defense weapons, drones, ammunition and fuel. This training and equipment is helping Ukraine to defend itself. Ukraine has a fundamental right to self-defense enshrined in the UN Charter, and NATO allies and partners will continue to help Ukraine uphold that right by providing military equipment and financial and humanitarian assistance. NATO's core task is to protect and defend all allies.
I just wish you would just say the individual, I wish you would be better at making the distinction between individual nations providing aid and, NATO providing aid.
We have responded to this crisis quickly, activating our defense plans, raising our readiness, and deploying the NATO response force for the first time for collective defense. There are now hundreds of thousands of forces on heightened alert across the alliance, 100,000 US troops in Europe, and around 40,000 troops under direct NATO command, mostly in the eastern part of the alliance. Backed by major air and naval power, as well as air defenses. The US is currently deploying Patriot batteries to Poland, and Germany and the Netherlands are also deploying Patriots to Slovakia. All of this sends an unmistakable message. An attack on one ally will be met with a decisive response from the whole alliance. Russia's invasion of Ukraine and its military integration in Belarus creates a new security reality on the European continent. So we need to reset NATO's military posture for this new reality. Tomorrow, ministers will start an important discussion on concrete measures to reinforce our security for the longer term in all domains. On land, this could include substantially more forces in the eastern part of the alliance at higher readiness and with more pre-positioned equipment. We will also consider major increases to our air and naval deployments, strengthening our integrated air and missile defense, reinforcing our cyber defenses, and holding more and larger exercises. I expect we will task NATO's military commanders to develop options for our Madrid summit in June. Major reinforcements of defense will require major increases in investment. I welcome that Germany and other allies have already announced they are stepping up, and I encourage all allies to spend a minimum of 2% of GDP on defense. We must do more, so we must also invest more to protect peace and freedom and uphold our values at this critical time. And with that, I'm ready to take your questions.
Okay, we'll start with CNN.
Thank you. I'm wondering whether you can say whether the NATO alliance has seen evidence that China has been providing Russia with any kind of assistance that would help it on the battlefield, whether that's military equipment or MREs, food for troops, anything of that kind. And also with regard to the situation that we saw earlier this week.
Somebody actually made a mention of this earlier. I wonder if we'll get an answer.
targeting a military base very close to Poland's border. I'm wondering what you can say about the kind of red lines and whether there would be any kind of consequences if a missile, for example, were accidentally to enter NATO territory or on purpose. Thank you.
So NATO's core responsibility, our main responsibility, is to protect and defend all NATO allies, 1 billion people in 30 different countries, and to ensure that we also do that now in a more dangerous security situation in Europe caused by the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. We have increased the presence in the eastern part of the alliance, we have increased the readiness of our troops, and we are deploying more capabilities, especially to the eastern part of the alliance. So an attack on one ally will trigger the response from the whole alliance, and we are there to protect and defend every inch of NATO allied territory. When we see more military activities, when we see actually fighting going on close to NATO borders, there's always a risk for incidents and accidents. And therefore we have to make every effort to prevent such incidents and accidents, and if they happen, to make sure that they don't spiral out of control and create really dangerous situations. We are very closely monitoring the airspace and the border areas around NATO. And our military commanders also have the lines to their Russian commanders to help to prevent incidents and accidents and also prevent them from spiraling out of control.
Wow, that's a tiny bit reassuring. A little bit, kind of.
Happen. On China, so China should join the rest of the world.
That's not an answer.
Condemning strongly the brutal invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And any support to Russia, military support, any other type of support, will actually help Russia conduct a brutal war against an independent sovereign nation, Ukraine, and help them to continue to wage war, which is causing death, suffering, and an enormous amount of destruction. So China has an obligation as a member of the UN Security Council to actually support and uphold international law, and the Russian invasion of
that was the long-winded. That took way too long. Listen, if you don't know, then just say that. Holy yikes! Just say you don't know, or just say you can't say.
Ukraine is a blatant violation of international law, so we call on Russia to clearly condemn the invasion and, of course, not support Russia, and we are closely monitoring any signs of support from China to Russia.
We'll go to the National News Agency of Ukraine, over there.
Dmitry Shkurko, National News Agency of Ukraine. Secretary General, NATO have a glorious story of supporting some countries and preventing bloodshed, for example, like it happened in Sarajevo, in Kosovo, and so on. What is the threshold for NATO when the Russian killings will overcome that threshold to NATO for direct involvement? And
why are you asking these questions? Look, he already said what he needed to say. Okay? The red line is if Russia touches a NATO country, blah, 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 will trigger a response from all. Why do you keep asking these questions? Like, when is NATO going to get involved? Like, bro.
That if you follow the Russian rhetorics, they're not going to stop purely in Ukraine. So that
if they don't stop at Ukraine and they touch a NATO ally, he already answered the question.
The question is,
Jesus.
Isn't the right time for NATO to intervene, to defeat and to broke Putin's military machine while it's still in Ukraine, while waiting when the Russian bombs will be falling to the European capitals? Thank you.
NATO allies have supported Ukraine for many years, and especially since Russia invaded Ukraine for the first time back in 2014. And NATO allies like the United Kingdom, the United States, Canada have also helped to train tens of thousands of Ukrainian forces, special operation forces and other troops. And they are now bravely fighting and resisting the invading Russian forces.
I think he sounded, and no offense, but he sounded European.
In strengthening the Ukrainian armed forces, and Ukrainian armed forces are much bigger, much stronger, much better equipped, much better trained now than in 2014. And I'm glad that NATO allies have helped to achieve that with the training and with the equipment. Then, of course, it's
You're a better newsman than that guy. Thank you. How's it going,
the
Heat?
Ukrainian armed forces and the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian political leadership that has actually enabled them to fight back, to slow down, to resist.
Morning. Yeah, like the framing of these questions, like it feels like they're just like trying to get an answer of like, when is NATO going to get involved? When are you going to go in? When are the troops? Like, bro, that's not NATO's job. That's not NATO's job. NATO isn't going to deploy any troops in Ukraine. Okay? As far as we know, as far as any movements have been mentioned, as far as we know, there are no NATO troops that are going to be deployed in Ukraine to fight Russia. That's just not a thing that's going to happen. The thing that this guy up here, I don't know his name, Stoltenberg, is saying is that he is reaffirming that a attack on one is an attack on null. Ukraine is not in NATO, as you just pointed out, Tendera. Therefore, they have no duty to defend or to be involved. Period. Yeah, they want a short, clippy headline. Yeah, but it's literally clipping and shipping. It's the equivalent of getting Twitch clips, but for news. Oh man. Yeah. So NATO's not going to get involved unless they touch a NATO ally. Blah 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 blah.
The Russian rhetorics, they are not going to stop.
Yeah, he sounds like
so that the question
European.
We'll go to the National News Agency of Ukraine over there.
Dmitry Shkurko, National News Agency of Ukraine. Secretary General, NATO have a glorious story of supporting some countries and preventing bloodshed, for example, like it happened in Sarajevo, in Kosovo, and so on. What is the threshold for NATO when the Russian killings will overcome that threshold to NATO for direct involvement? And
yeah, what are the thresholds? He already told you. What are the red lines? Bro, he already told you.
Because of, and I think this support over many years have proven extremely important in strengthening the Ukrainian armed forces. And the Ukrainian armed forces are much bigger, much stronger, much better equipped, much better trained now than in 20 and which is a responsibility of President Putin. And it is President Putin who is responsible for this war. He can end this war now, withdraw all his troops now, and then engage in good faith in a political effort to find a diplomatic solution. So we're calling on President Putin to do exactly that. Then NATO's Ukraine is a highly valued partner, which we have supported and continue to support, and allies are also stepping up support, partly with military equipment, partly with financial support, humanitarian support, but also by imposing the sanctions, which is forcing, which are actually crippling Russian economy.
Yeah, and have they stopped? No. Yes, HelloFresh. We'll talk about that in a couple seconds.
Our responsibility as an alliance is to protect and defend all allies, and we are sending a clear message that we are ready to do so by increasing the presence in the eastern part of the alliance. But again, it is Russia and President Putin that are responsible for the invasion of Ukraine, and President Putin should end this senseless war by withdrawing its forces from Ukraine.
Okay, Politico.
Thank you. I'm Lily from Politico. Why do the US and NATO insist that fighter jets won't be helpful for Ukraine when the Ukrainians themselves say otherwise? Shouldn't it be up to the Ukrainian authorities to say what would be helpful for them? Thank you.
NATO allies are providing many different types of equipment, including advanced air defense systems, which have actually helped the Ukrainians to shoot down Russian planes, Russian missiles, and the allies continue to provide support also when it comes to different types of air defense systems. But I will not go into the details of every type of supply, every type of support, exactly how and where, because I think that will just make it harder and more difficult to continue to provide this type of support. We are, NATO allies are stepping up and providing also advanced air defense systems.
That wasn't really an answer, but it's irrelevant because like the logistics of that plan were pretty poor. I mean, how the heck are you supposed to get those planes inside, right? Are you supposed to fly them? From where? Who is going to fly them?
Follow up on an earlier question. There have apparently been UAV incursions into NATO airspace. Apparently one Russian drone entered and left Polish airspace, and another one crashed in NATO territory. How do you determine when something like that is an act of aggression or...
Oh my God, the framing of these questions. Are you listening to this, folks? This is Wall Street Journal. Are you listening to the frame? So, when do we go to war? When do we go to war? What?
Warrants response, and you were talking
When do we end this all in a nuclear winter? Please tell us.
earlier about escalation. How do you ensure that something like that is handled in a way that is appropriate and doesn't get out of control? Thank you.
Well, I cannot confirm the latest incidents you are referring to, but in general, I can say that we are stepping up our vigilance, our presence, the way we monitor our airspace, and including by deploying new Patriot batteries to the eastern part of the alliance. And by doing that, and also through our AWACS surveillance planes and increased air policing, air patrolling, we are both increasing the capabilities we have to monitor, to track, but also to ensure that we are able to react if needed. NATO's integrated air and missile defense tracked the flight path of an object which entered Romanian airspace on Sunday. In response, Romanian fighter aircraft scrambled immediately to investigate, and the Romanian authorities and NATO are reviewing this incident, as we're also reviewing the incident that ended with the crash of a drone in Croatia. The indications we have so far on the drone that crashed in Croatia outside Zagreb is that was not an armed attack, not an armed drone, but it just highlights that with more military activities in the air, with drones or planes, there is a risk for incidents and accidents.
Yes,
and
great,
we need to be
but
extremely vigilant. We need to react when needed, and we need to make sure that we have the communications, the line of communications also with the Russians, to prevent.
yes, exactly. Continue the open line of communication so that accidents are avoided or addressed. Okay?
Incidents from really creating dangerous situations. So that's the reason why we are increasing the presence and also the surveillance and monitoring of the airspace of NATO.
Bloomberg, lady in blue, just one minute.
Thank you for the question, Natalia Drozdiak from Bloomberg. I just wanted to follow up on what you said in your introduction about the risk of false flag event and Russia maybe using chemical weapons. How would NATO respond in such a scenario? Is this a red line for potential?
When do we send in the troops? Jesus Christ. Oh my God. Are all these like clowns gonna ask the same thing, just reworded in different ways? So tell me, Mr. Stoltenberg, if Russia does this, then do we go in? What? Oh my God, is every journalist gonna just ask this question in different frames, in different ways? Holy yikes, dude. So if Russia, hypothetically, steps into 0.1 centimeter of NATO territory, what should NATO do? What? Is that a red line? If Putin himself drives a tank 1 millimeter east, hypothetically, is that a red line?
NATO intervention? Thank you.
Any use of chemical weapons will be a violation of international law, will be a violation of the ban that, or the treaty that bans chemical weapons, and Russia has signed to that convention. We call on Russia not to use chemical weapons. We call on Russia to withdraw all its forces and to stop the
Right, because they can't do anything about it. That's what he's telling you. Stop asking these asinine questions with these wild scenarios. Look, this isn't me defending Russia, by the way. I'm just trying to paint the picture of A, how the framing of these questions are being done, and B, these folks just really want to, I mean, that's what it sounds like. And if they don't, then why are they asking like these wild hypotheticals? Like, yeah, exactly, Dimesh. If Putin eats a Polish sausage that came from Poland that actually crossed into NATO territory, is that a red line? Like, what? No. If Russia should be so, brazen and horrifying, more than it has been already, and uses chemical weapons, then that should be universally and unilaterally condemned immediately. That is not okay. That is not a thing to do. Okay? Yeah, when are they might as well ask just that. This is ridiculous.
But in particular, not to use any chemical weapons. Russia has used chemical agents before to attack and actually kill political opponents.
That's probably a good response, because he didn't actually say that NATO would go in. Notice his response was just to kind of pivot. And be like, well, anyways, yeah, that would be condemned, and Russia's done this in the past to political opponents, blah blah blah. Like, he didn't actually answer of whether or not that would be a red line, which I think was her question.
We have also seen that Russia has supported the Assad regime in Syria and helped to facilitate the use of chemical weapons several times in Syria. And any use of chemical weapons is absolutely unacceptable. And
oh wow!
And, therefore, it is also extremely important that Russia understands that it is unacceptable if they.
Damn! How does he do it, chat? How does he do it? How did he predict that should have been the answer? Damn.
Consider any use of chemical weapons, and we are also very vigilant about the possibility of them trying to stage some kind of pretext false flag operation to provide an excuse for any type of use of chemical weapons.
Okay, we'll go to NPR, Deutsche Welle, Lady in Pink.
Thank you very much. Just somewhat of a follow-up on Natalia's question. She was asking what NATO would do, and whether.
Bro, are you kidding me?
You say that you are looking at NATO's military posture again. Is this something that you would consider changing? You have said that this would be a war crime.
Oh my God! Are you, this is insane. This is actually insane. This is actually insane. So, just to follow up on the previous question of when do we get to go in? Can you tell us when do we get to go in?
Know that simply warning Russia against doing something is not enough of a deterrent to stop it. So if NATO knows, or if NATO sees that a chemical attack could take place, and you say that's a war crime, would NATO consider?
Bro, there have been war crimes already. There already have been war crimes. There have already been war crimes. We have committed war crimes. We are still committing war crimes. What kind of question is this? Yeah, they want to be the reporter who gets the WW3 answer. Jesus.
The fact that it would not intervene in such a.
It cannot intervene. It cannot intervene. NATO is a defensive alliance, allegedly, on paper, is a defensive alliance. NATO's job is to react.
Such a threat. Thank you.
Our main responsibility is to protect and defend all NATO allies.
Good answer. Our primary objective is to protect all NATO allies. Should a chemical attack or whatever then be directed at a NATO ally, well, then that's a response is warranted at that point because they touched a NATO ally. Until then, Ukraine, for the umpteenth time, is not a NATO ally.
It is important that Russia understands that we are there to do exactly that. We have conveyed a very clear message to Russia about that we also see when they try to.
How many times has this guy had to say that NATO is committed to the defense of its allies? This guy has said it already in this course of almost 20 minutes, like 5 times already.
Stage pretext for for the use of chemical weapons. We have seen that they, throughout this crisis, have tried to create different kinds of false flag operations to try to provide excuses for the use of force. We saw that in the lead-up to the intervention, and now we have seen them accusing Ukraine and also NATO allies developing chemical weapons. And that's an absolute lie, and therefore it also makes us a bit concerned about the possibility that they are actually planning to do that. The President of the United States and other allies also made it very clear that if they use chemical weapons, there will be a high price to pay. But I will not speculate about any military response from NATO.
Right. There cannot be a military response from NATO. Sorry. I think this is where we basically got caught up here.
DPA, gentleman in white, just behind. Yeah. No, okay. Frankfurt Allgemeine Zeitung.
Thomas Kutschka, Frankfurt Allgemeine Zeitung. Secretary General, after the demise of the INF Treaty, it's been NATO's position that the Russian deployment of SSC-8 will not be reciprocated.
Okay, yeah, I think this is it, right? This is where we left off, pretty much. All right.
The deployment of medium or intermediate nuclear-capable...
Yeah, okay. Jesus Christ. These reporters are unbelievably infuriating. Unbelievably infuriating. I don't know if they're just motivated by the title, the headline. They want to be the ones that get the clip. You know, UN Secretary Chief says that NATO will respond military. Like, okay. What is it that they want? Somehow, I remember a time when reporters were actually journalists who had some intelligence before blurting out questions about such matters. Yeah, like, how is that going to also be perceived? Right? This is beautiful. Beautifully packaged, I should say. Propaganda already made for Russia. It's already beautifully packaged. The fact that they, man, the fact that they were trying so hard to get an answer like that, Jesus. This makes me sad. I've been to Lake Powell. It's beautiful. Yeah. They all have bosses demanding high action headlines. True. True. Right, they might as well just ask. So when are the nukes flying? When do we get to end this in nuclear winter? Can you please answer that? When do two nuclear superpowers get to cross swords? Folks, I need to take a second to talk about the month-long sponsor that we've gotten thanks to Stream Elements. And that month-long sponsor is HelloFresh. Yes, that's right, HelloFresh. I appreciate the opportunity. Of course, this was through Stream Elements, so thank you so much. Folks, if you don't know what HelloFresh is, it is a basic meal kind of prep that you can, to me, it's a teaching tool to cook. They deliver meals straight to your home, or they deliver the prep straight to your home. Easy to cook. There are veggie options, of course. And if you use the code, which is right there on the right-hand side, POG, SE2534, get up to 16 free meals and 3 surprise gifts across your 6 HelloFresh boxes. If you want to support the channel and get some already easy-to-make food with veggie options, consider typing !HelloFresh or click the link right there on top, or click the link on the channel panels, and make sure you use POG SE2534. I have used HelloFresh myself. I've used it for quite some time, especially during the pandemic. I still have all the recipes too. So even if you end up not liking it, or you end up not continuing, a HelloFresh membership, you can always keep the recipes. They're good recipes, I promise. I appreciate that, and I appreciate HelloFresh. Imagine the guy that just says, fine, I'll bomb Russia. Yeah, like, can you imagine if that's the response? The ingredients are organic according to HelloFresh, yes. In fact, we can just quickly look that up. Because when I had it, when I had HelloFresh, it said organic. Mayhem Hippie subscribing with a tier 1 sub. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Wow. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. Okay, so I looked it up. Every recipe includes fresh produce sourced directly from farmers. I'm going to double check on that because I could have sworn I'm going to pull one of my own little packets that I had from back then. Well, from last year. And I'm going to double check that, but it looks like this is pretty decent. Yeah, I was just about to look it up. Yeah, I need to look at my own recipe stuff that I got. Well, when I had it myself. But yeah, I'll make sure I get that. I'll make sure to get that one down. There are veggie options that don't have meat. There are meatless options too. There are pescatarian options, veggie options as well. Alright folks, climate change, low water levels at key US reservoir putting US in uncharted territory. Water managers are tracking the elevations of Lake Powell and Lake Mead, two of the largest reservoirs in the US, as a historic mega drought made worse by climate change grips the western states. Lake Powell currently sits at over 3,525 feet above sea level and 35 feet below the threshold. The Glen Canyon Dam, which created Lake Powell, is at an increased risk of damage and being unable to produce electricity for 5 million people. Jesus. We're talking about the second largest reservoir ever constructed by the U.S., said Justin Mankin, NOAA Drought Task Force co-lead and assistant professor at Dartmouth. The thing is like 200 miles long. When it's full, it's held back by one of the largest concrete structures ever built by humans, the Glen Canyon Dam. So the idea that this massive structure, which I think is pretty emblematic of America's best ever effort to kind of transform the water supply in the American West, is failing, is really putting us in an uncharted territory legally, politically, socially, and economically. Yeah, it turns out water is very important. I know, water is incredibly important. Mankin added that what we're seeing is the beginning or some point in the process of what's going to be a really long and painful collapse of the Western water economy as we know it. That's a good meme. Since 2000, the Western U.S. has been facing the worst 22-year drought in 1,200 years, the severity of which has been at least partially attributed to human-caused climate change. According to a report by NOAA's Drought Task Force, the economic losses from the drought in 2020 alone amount to between 515 million to 1.3 billion. When wildfires are factored in, since drought can be a catalyst for fires and fuel their spread, the cost can rise between 11 billion and 23 billion. Yep. California, Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, Arizona, and the Navajo Nation have all declared drought states of emergency as of 2021. This is just another year in a long string drought, and it's had just a compounding and cascading effect on the environment here. Andrew Howell, a meteorologist at the NOAA Physical Science Laboratory and co-leader of the NOAA Drought Task Force, told Yahoo Finance. Low precipitation, high temperatures over a period of time depletes your resilience, depletes your water resources. And this is really where we're at right now. We're seeing lower reservoir reservoir levels, lower river flows. So there's just a lot of things going on that are really producing a bad situation in a lot of different ways. Yep. Just more of the future of what things are going to look like. Drought is becoming serious in the East Coast as well. We're not getting enough snowfall in the winter and it's not really filling the table with snowmelt. That's also true. Mayhem hippie. Yeah, so just to continue to hammer down the importance of addressing the situation. Alright, we continue our journey in the IPCC. Oh. That's weird. Okay. Anyways, we can continue our journey at the IPCC Working Group 2 technical summary, page 19. If you guys want to check that out in its entirety, there are... this is the exact source. Alright, several chronic non-communicable respiratory diseases are climate-sensitive based on their exposure pathways like heat, cold, dust, small particles, ozone, fire, smoke, and allergens, high confidence. Although climate change is not the dominant driver in all cases, exposure to wildfire-associated smoke has increased in several regions, very high confidence. The 2019 to 2020 southeastern Australian wildfires resulted in... Oh wait, we already went through this. Resulted in 33 people killed, a further 429 deaths, 3,230 hospitalizations, due to cardiovascular respiratory conditions, true, and 1.9 billion in health costs. That's just health costs alone, folks. Okay, so we've actually gone past that. We're down here. Okay, here we are. Immobility in the context of climate risk reflects both vulnerability and lack of agency, but is also a deliberate choice, high confidence. Deliberate or voluntary immobility represents an assertion of importance of culture, livelihood, and sense of place. Planned relocations by governments of settlements and populations exposed to climatic hazards are not presently commonplace, although the need is expected to grow. Existing examples of relocation of indigenous people in coastal Alaska and villages in the Solomon Islands and Fiji suggest that relocated people can experience significant financial and emotional distress And as cultural and spiritual bonds to places and livelihoods are disrupted, high confidence. Vulnerability significantly determines how climate change impacts are being experienced by societies and communities. Vulnerability to climate change is a multidimensional phenomenon, dynamic and shaped by intersecting historical, contemporary, political, economic, cultural process of marginalization. High confidence. Society with high levels of inequity are less resilient to climate change. High confidence. True. About 3.3 billion people are living in countries with human vulnerability to climate change. High confidence. 3.3 billion. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's a little over a third, I think, of all people. Approximately 1.8 billion people reside in regions classified as having low vulnerability. Global concentrations of high vulnerability are emerging in transboundary areas encompassing more than one country as a result of interlinked issues concerning health, poverty, migration, conflict, gender inequality, inequity, education, high debt, weak institutions, lack of governance capacities, and infrastructure. Complex vulnerability patterns are shaped by past developments such as colonialism and its ongoing legacy. High confidence are worsened by compounding and cascading risks. High confidence and are socially differentiated. For example, low-income, young, poor, female-headed households face greater livelihood risks from climate hazards. High confidence. Climate change is impacting the indigenous peoples' ways of life. Very high confidence, cultural and linguistic diversity, medium confidence, and food security. High confidence and health and well-being. Very high confidence. Indigenous knowledge and local knowledge contribute to reducing the vulnerability of communities to climate change. Medium to high confidence. Supporting indigenous self-determination, recognizing indigenous people's rights, and supporting indigenous knowledge-based adaptation is critical. I agree. To reducing climate change risk and effective adaptation, very high confidence. The intersection of gender, race, class, ethnicity, sexuality, indigenous identity, is that considered part of race? That seems kind of weird. Age, disability, income, migrant status, and geographic location often compound vulnerability to climate change impacts. Very high confidence exacerbate inequity and further injustice. There's evidence that present adaptation strategies do not sufficiently include poverty reduction and underlying social determinants of human vulnerability such as gender, ethnicity, and governance. High confidence. Climate variability and extremes are associated with prolonged conflict through food price spikes, food and water insecurity, loss of income, loss of livelihoods, with high confidence, with more consistent evidence for low-intensity organized violence within countries than for major or international armed conflict. Compared to other socioeconomic factors, the influence on climate or on conflict is assessed as relatively weak, high confidence, but is exacerbated by insecure land tenure, weather-sensitive economic activities, weak institutions, and fragile governance, poverty, and inequality. Medium confidence. Literature also suggests that a larger climate-related influence on the dynamics of conflict than on the likelihood of initial conflict outbreak. Low confidence. There's insufficient evidence at present to attribute armed conflict to human-induced climate change. Well, I would add an asterisk to that, because right now that may be true. But things will get a lot more, spicier when we can't get food or water in the same manner that we used to. And certain regions are going to be more vulnerable to that, right? Cities and settlements, particularly unplanned and informal settlements and in coastal and mountainous regions, have continued to grow at rapid rates and remain crucial as both concentrated sites of increased exposure to risk and increasing vulnerability as sites of action on climate change. High confidence. More people and key assets are exposed to climate-induced impacts and loss and damages in cities, settlements, and key infrastructure since AR5. High confidence. Sea level rise, heat waves, droughts, changes in runoff, flood, wildfires, and permafrost thaw cause disruptions of key infrastructure and services, such as energy supply and transmission, communications, food, water supply, transport systems in and between urban and peri-urban areas. High confidence. The most rapid growth in urban vulnerability and exposure has been in cities and settlements where adaptive capacity is limited, including informal settlements and low and middle income communities. and in smaller, medium-sized urban communities, high confidence. Globally, urban populations have grown by more than 397 million people between 2015 to 2020, with more than 90% of this growth taking place in less developed regions. The most rapid growth in urban vulnerability has been unplanned in informal settlements and in smaller to medium urban centers in low and medium income nations where adaptive capacity is limited. High confidence. Since AR5, observed impacts of climate change on cities, peri-urban areas, and settlements have extended from direct climate-driven impacts to compound cascading and systemic impacts. High confidence. Patterns of urban growth, inequity, poverty, informality, and precariousness in housing are uneven and shape cities in key regions such as within Africa and Asia. In sub-Saharan Africa, about 60% of its urban population live in informal settlements, while Asia is home to the largest share of people, 29 million, live in informal settlements. The high degree of informality limits adaptation and increases differential vulnerability to climate change. High confidence. Global exposure to climate-driven impacts such as heat waves, extreme precipitation, and storms, in combination with rapid urbanization and lack of climate-sensitive planning, along with continuing threats of urban heat islands, is increasing the vulnerability in marginalized urban populations and key infrastructure for climate change. Example, more frequent and extreme rainfall and drought stress, existing design and capacity of current urban water systems, and heightened urban and peri-urban water insecurity. High confidence. COVID-19 has had a substantial urban impact and generated new climate-vulnerable populations. High confidence. Whew. All right. We got to page 21-ish. So we'll continue this again tomorrow. Did you see Jon Stewart's climate change episode? No, I have not. Zelensky reported to have said Ukraine will not join NATO. Interesting. So now I want to see what the Russian response is to that. Alright folks, unfortunately that is all the time I have today. Thank you guys so much for joining. Thank you, Spread It Forward. Thank you, Heat420, I appreciate it. Thank you so much to the Benjamin B. Dixon Show for rating. Thank you for all the follows. Thank you for the subscription. I appreciate that. Thank you. As always, again, don't forget to check out the month sponsor, HelloFresh, exclamation point HelloFresh. Check the panels in the channel page below. As always, please talk about the Southern Manifesto. I have no idea what that is. Thanks for the show. Thank you for hanging out. Have a good one. You have a good one. As always, please stay safe. Please take care of each other. I love you all, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. See ya. Alright, folks, we're heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. See ya.